see we're all, look at this, our panelists are all in position. The only thing we're missing is you. So please grab a seat, grab some food, grab whatever, grab a friend. Preferably your own seat. But this is Glendale, any command. Alright, so it's my pleasure to bring up our panel moderator, Jennifer Shuffle from Dr. Cog. If you don't know, Dr. Cog is Denver Regional Council of Governments. They do tremendous amounts of planning, etc. So she's going to talk a little bit about that. Jennifer, where are you? Come on up, Jennifer Shuffle. Some sounds like Stevie Wonder. Have fun.
It is my big song. It wasn't a song about paranoia, superstition. Well, thank you for having us here, and thank you for allowing me to moderate this esteemed panel. Let me introduce everyone. This is Diane Barrett, Rick Garcia, George Shore, and Bill Savoy. I know time is limited, and I'm going to get us off track, so let me just jump right in. And George, I'm actually going to start with you. Here in the Denver metropolitan region, we've got this great opportunity to have this historic ability to foster livable communities and create places around community. What would you say are the key elements? We're getting a little you okay? What would you say are the key elements of turning transit stations into great places, but also how do we create vibrant communities when we're dealing with parking and density and things like that?
Easy question. And I think Mr. Porter's did a great job of teeing up a lot of the area. But remember, I'm a real estate guy, so I start with the real estate. And that sounds like a simple statement, and it is, but it's really true that all these station sites, I think, originally in fast routes there were 750, and that's somewhere between 50 and 60 station sites, I think. Not every one of those sites is a TOD site. Many of them are and will be, and we're seeing that happen today. But the difficulties in creating a place when all you have to start with is a rail line and in fact a stop really comes to the private sector, I think, to figure out how to build something on it. And notwithstanding what Mayor Hogan said about developers always reacting to the market, that's unfortunately something that is a fact of life, because all of us depend on financing, and financing depends on markets, and we've been through a terrible market time. I mean, our timing for fast tracks probably couldn't have been worse from a development standpoint. If you think of the fast tracks was approved in the fall of 2004, the Key-Rex line opened in the fall of 2006. And there was agreement and the rest of the Wall Street fell apart in 2007 and 8, just as people were starting to get comfortable with the whole idea of TOD. So I think from a real estate standpoint, I think cities like Denver, Aurora, Lakewood, Urbana have already got well ahead of this, not only with stationary planning, but with major changes in their zoning codes. Denver stepped up and really kind of took the lead on this. So a developer like me that wants to develop around transit, and that's 80% of what I'm doing today, I don't have to go fight a 2 or 3 year battle every single time just to be able to build the density that Mr. Gordon has talked about. Because again, if we have surface parking lots and we're going to build 10 unit acre densities, we're not really getting anywhere. We might as well leave it as a surface parking lot and come back and fight another day. So we've been able to get densities of as much as 100 units to the acre under the new Denver zoning code, and never have a conversation about FAR or density, because the code takes the pressure off of us, and unfortunately puts it back, in some cases, back on city council people who are still getting beat up in their council district. So I'll stop there and say that there are lots of things that we can all do to make the real estate as easy as it can be. I mean, I'll take the risk of buying it or financing it, but if I have to take all the entitlement risk on top of that, and a tough market, and a market that still doesn't quite understand TOD, it's cities have stepped out, and most of them have. It's a great first step.
Diane, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I just say, George is a real estate guy, I'm a city guy, and I do agree that what cities do is key to establishing the kinds of places we are looking for. Denver not only did the zoning code that basically gives immediate credit, parking credit, for instance, in the TMP areas. We stole from the blueprint Denver from 2001 that Councilman Rob and others worked so hard on, the idea of areas of change and areas of stability. So when Mr. Corliss talked earlier about leaving single-family areas alone and really building density around stations, that's really what our code and our blueprint Denver planning process allows us to do on that. So I think we're doing it right. We have bumps in the road, but I think that we're going to achieve what we want. The other thing I think cities have done, and this is just exemplary, is to work together to avoid the problem of just having the same old thing at every station. So on the West Corridor, for instance, long ago, about 2006-07, we formed what then was called the West Corridor Friends. And we had Lakewood and Golden and Jeffco and ultimately the Federal Center all joined together to discuss our stationary planning and do it together so that we end up with a nice assortment of activities and emphases in different stations along the same line.
For the point of view,
Well, from the HUD perspective, like someone earlier mentioned, was going to be a HUD guy later on the panel, but let me indicate, I guess I'm not HUD, at least at the moment. Some of you may recall that I also served as a member city council member for a number of years, and also a future transportation district member. So this conversation has been evolving for a long time, and in particular, I give some recognition to the region's leadership. Many of those individuals, I think, are probably in this room, because these kinds of focused conversations today don't happen necessarily quickly, because there's been a lot of work done over the years, about decades, to bring this conversation to this point. So the good news is that we're having that conversation. Maybe the not so good news is that sometimes government is slower to respond and react to the market needs. If local government is slow, I might have to say that the federal government may be snail. But we have gotten the message, and truthfully from the course of our federal leadership, from the president down to my boss, Secretary Sean Donovan, the recognition that communities just like here in Denver and the metro region, other places around the country, are grappling with these kinds of issues. And what can the federal government do to be helpful? One of the things that we rolled out a number of years ago is the Sustainable Communities Initiative, a federal partnership made up of USDOT and US EPA, and provided to date over $250 million of planning grants to have these local agencies, communities, local developers, chamber of commerce's, economic development organizations come together to discuss how they can answer the question that Jennifer started off with this panel. And fortunately, Dr. Cobb is in the midst of the throes of managing one of those grants right now in the metro region. But I think more from a government perspective is that we can be helpful in providing that kind of investment to assist local communities to do the thing, ask the questions, and move their agenda forward. I don't think the federal government necessarily wants to tell local governments how to do it, what to do. We want to be there to be supportive. But one of the clear opportunities, I think, in recognition to this question, is that there's some real market shifts occurring, mostly in demographics. One that I just read recently, I'll share with you, some of you may be aware of it, is that folks in their 20s, for the first time since the 70s, are driving less. From 20% of the age group individuals in random centers, it's down to something like 15%. So we know that in the future, we have market realities such as younger folks who are gravitating to places like Denver. Frankly, without a job, they choose where they want to live first. Then they look for a job. I think that's going to be the trend going forward in this region, and I think a lot of the transit investments we made for the development can occur around stations. It's going to lead the way to ensure that we have positioned this region to be as competitive as it can be in the decades to come.
I think that's a good point that you make about, and what we've heard earlier as well, what college graduates and the younger generations are really looking for. But I think it's also important to remember that the Denver metro region is aging very rapidly, and we're going to see a doubling in the 60 and over population. We're also going to see a large amount of growth in the Hispanic population in the metropolitan region too, and in large part we're talking about communities and families that are fixed income, lower income, and really need the transportation options. They can't necessarily afford to have a car. So I'm interested, Bill, from the RTD point of view, how do you create these vibrant communities but still deal with these politically sensitive issues around transit stations?
Well, I think a theme that's going to echo throughout James talked about it, I think pretty much appears these partnerships, is that the idea of creating transit-oriented development supports my generation of Washington support transit communities is that they're so complex, and George can attest to this, in terms of how much effort it takes to actually implement COD. And the idea that having a true partnership between local jurisdiction, between private developer, between RTD is really important. We've done some of that associated with some projects that we're working on. In particular, one of the things that we tried to do with RTD is try to kind of change our mindset a little bit. A couple years ago, we did change our policy to look at being more proactive in the area of COD. Created a pilot program. We worked with the city of Denver, the city of Nevada, the city of Lakewood, in terms of looking at creating model transit-oriented developments. I think we hope that those, and we are getting closer, and some perspective and coming from the audience, have looked at groundbreaking that we shared for our first one at the Alameda station. But I think, the importance of partnerships is key, because everybody brings something unique to the table. We obviously bring the transit, in some cases land. The city brings incentives for development to happen, and then obviously private development is the one that really makes it happen. But then on the other side, I think there is also a need to look at these and look at them in terms of what can you accomplish in a reasonable time frame. It gets to George's comment about the market, and James, I think, also reiterated this fact, because we only have a really kind of defined market that can really accomplish TOD in the next 5 to 10 years, and looking at where is the greatest opportunity for success. And try to focus on some of those. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do with our pilot program is picking 4 sites where we think we can create model TOD developments that the whole region can learn from, and the whole region can look at and say, I want to do that, how do I do it? And we can hopefully, through our process, work with everybody in the region and say, here's the keys to make that happen, which public-private partnerships is key, prioritizing resources, because I think a lot of scarce resources in particular local jurisdictions, which I would say the glue to making all these things happen is making sure there's prioritization so that you can focus on a few key sites versus spreading it out all over the place. Because I think if you focus, I think you can have a greater opportunity for success.
We've heard a lot this morning, particularly from James, about the last mile challenges here in the region. I'm interested, Bill, from RTD's point of view, how do we go about addressing some of the Denver-specific, Denver region-specific last mile challenges, and just as important, or maybe more so, how do we go about paying for those, to fix those challenges?
Well, one of the things that we do with every transit line that we do, we're doing this processing this support portion next month, is when we open a new transit line, we obviously reorient our bus service. So we reorient our bus service so that we feed into the stations and really try to focus and create those connections from the communities to the stations to help with that piece. And that's, again, that's one element of the setting. The other element, again, is from a pedestrian and bike access perspective, which again, we work with local jurisdictions. The local jurisdictions really, outside the station area, that's pretty much their purview in terms of making key investments so that you can walk and you can, bike to those communities. Working with Dr. Cog as regional dollars available for those kind of investments, we've done a really good job at, I would say over the last 5 to 10 years, of creating an opportunity for some federal dollars to go in to help with local jurisdictions to make some of those improvements. A lot of what I think that, what we've heard a lot about too is circulators. How does that work? And I think there's an opportunity there to, work in a partnership, and the private sector, we did involve local jurisdictions to look at some opportunities for some circulators where they do make sense to actually create some unique connections. An example of that is, I don't know if anyone has seen the art show in Englewood, which creates a connection from the Englewood station to the Swedish medical center. And it's a great connection. It's a shuttle that actually the city of Englewood actually helps to pay for to supplement that. And we actually contribute that as well. So I think from those aspects, it does create a partnership to create some of those last mile connections.
Yeah, I think the last mile is, frankly, it's something that I hope that Transportation Solutions, the group that is hosting this event, has been focused on forever, and I think we want to refocus. Joyce Foster reminded me of a little project that we did when we gave birth to Transportation Solutions 20 years ago, which was called Beeline. And Beeline was a little purple bus that ran from University Hills to essentially Cherry Creek Shopping Center to be available, particularly during the lunch hour and at the PM peak, to pick up people who wanted to walk out of their office building or their place of business and go someplace for lunch instead of getting into their car, which is anybody who drives Colorado Boulevard like I do every day, you know something's happening at lunchtime. It's not good because all of a sudden it goes, every intersection goes to basically level of service, D or F, which means you can't get through the signals. But I was thinking about this, just preparing myself to talk about some of these issues, and maybe the best example of a last mile piece of infrastructure that works great is the 16th Street Mall in downtown Denver. In fact, the only example of a TOD that has pretty much everything that a TOD is supposed to have is downtown Denver. I would maintain there's only one TOD, and it's a great model. So let's learn everything we can from that, because it's got different modes of transportation, it's got housing, it's got 125,000 people who want to work there every day, it's got 30 million square feet of office space and 5 million square feet of retail space. I mean, that's a TOD, folks. And one of the things that has made it work up until now is the 16th Street Mall, and now its cousin, the Downtown Circulator, one of my favorite projects, which I hope won't get cut back, which was part of Fast Tracks, because the mall shuttle is already operating at capacity. 60,000 to 70,000 people a day are riding the mall shuttle. That's incredible. But it doesn't have room for the rest of the Fast Tracks to dump into the Union Station and for everybody to get on the mall shuttle. So part of Fast Tracks, to RTD's credit, the City and County of Denver and the Downtown Denver Partnership, was to develop a parallel bus system, a circulator shuttle called the Downtown Circulator, that's going to run on 18th and 19th to take people from Union Station all the way up to Uptown, Civic Center, turn around the Art Museum and come back. So all of a sudden we've connected all of downtown by kind of getting around the 16th Street Mall. So that's a classic last mile solution. So we have one that's a model. I don't think that we can all sit around and wait for RTD or the public sector to figure this out. I think there've got to be some private entrepreneurial solutions to the last mile. And I would like to hope that people like Mile High Connects and others that are really getting into putting transportation together with land use and affordable housing and other housing options will think about helping fund some of the ideas that are coming along in a way of a demonstration project. Because I think once people see how that might work for them, to get them not only from the station to their place of work, but to get them from their home to the station, that's the other part of it. The first mile is just as lacking as the last mile, so we've got a lot of work to do. But if we can solve that, it'll make this whole system work that much better.
Diane, I'm sure that everyone in here is familiar and has ridden on the downtown 16th Street Mall shuttle, but maybe not everyone understands what it took to put that together. Can you talk maybe just a little bit about, and maybe involved in that as well, a little bit about the partnerships and the planning and how you address that from the city's point of view?
Well, we were talking about the extension, how to, it was obviously a critical part of the Fast Trains program for the city and RTD as well. We had to reroute the shuttle, which stopped at the station previously, so that it would extend and go out to the new light rail platforms. And that it turns around and comes back. And it's key to know, and I think this is the right statistic, that 80% of folks coming in from the West Line will be getting on the shuttle or otherwise going into downtown, rather than making a switch and going to another station. So that's a huge number of people that are going to be using that shuttle. So it was a critical piece to get that done and get that paid for. And now we're trying to improve the 16th Street Mall in order to make that part of the trip a pleasant experience, and spending a lot of time with the circulator, trying to figure out how to route that and how to pay for it, because I think RTD can't do that alone. As you point out, I think we have a lot of public-private partnership work to do there.
Do you want to add anything else?
Just a quick point about keeping things in perspective. 20 years ago, communities were putting pressure on elected officials to ensure that fixed highway transit would not impact their private property values. If you think about that, it was in the late 90s when I served on the RTD board. That was one of the biggest detriments to success in getting the West Corridor started. Today, we're talking about how we can add value to people's lives and properties as a result of this big investment. So things are really coming full circle. And as a result of that, I think private, George talked about the entrepreneurial opportunities, but I think from a public perspective, local governments can also be entrepreneurial. It's not often that you have property values that are going to increase to maybe create that increment of tax increment financing to get that investment. Those are the kinds of, I think, innovative, creative, entrepreneurial directions that local government leadership can be thinking about now before those transit stations are actually in place. Because in the long run, those property values are going to increase. One of the big and newest buzzwords in the sustainable community portfolio today is walkability. And communities that have more walkability than some value index that an organization will create are going to have property values within that station area increase. In Denver, I understand that property values within walkable stations are 150% higher than they are in areas where there's not walkability, or maybe more car-oriented communities. So the value is going to be there in the future. So local governments can consider those kinds of business improvement districts and other kinds of considerations to get those investments done, because they're key and they're going to be built for the future.
I'm going to stick with you for just a minute because I want to talk a little bit more about the challenges that we have to make these stations places and what all sectors, public, private, not-for-profit, what their roles are in that. And I'm particularly interested in the HUD point of view about property values, because as you said, we've all heard, the market has realized that property's holding values when they're close to the stations. But what do you do with regard, for example, with gentrification? Or how do you deal with the fact that our cities in particular rely on sales tax and are very interested in retail? How do you make sure that there's the housing and the housing diversity? So how do, and I'm just thinking of gentrification right now as just one of the challenges, but what are the roles of all the sectors in making these stations successful places?
Sure. I think it's a very important question for the time, because I think the Denver region is in a place where, yes, there's been some station development, it's been progressive, but there's still a lot more to come in the region. So if we can get ahead of that, think that through in a collaborative way. And I do think the local government has a lead role in this as it relates to lower commodity and cost housing. The gentrification issue has kind of been looming out there for some time. But I think the local governments, along with nonprofit organizations that also have that value, that's their purpose for existing, work collectively with the private sector and create these mixed income communities. And that's one of the outcomes. I know this has been touted an awful lot in the Denver community, but the Denver Housing Authority has been able to create, of course, that station at 10th and Merritt and Osage, and has been there for at least a decade. But now with the additional federal investment, it's a state investment, they're transforming that entire public housing community into a mixed income community, which is really a showpiece for the nation and how public housing agencies around the country can create the mixed income communities. That's got to be the answer. That's got to be the model for the future.
George, what are your thoughts on this being a private developer?
Well, again, I covered everything from being the real estate guy, but James Corliss earlier said that many communities and developers fight the basic TOD development, affordable housing consortium of people who want to often impose a restriction or a covenant to require affordable housing. In fact, it happened when I think RTD developed its TOD policy several years ago. We've started and taken our own initiative and taken 2 prime sites right on the I-25 corridor. One at Yale Station, where we've completed a 50-unit senior project, affordable, with the help of Chaffa, who gets it and understands TOD. And we just broke ground last week at University Station on another prime site. So we took the initiative as a developer because we figured out that with help from Chaffa, the city, but everybody was involved, everybody was at the table. And RTD and CDOT and every other acronym you can think of for an agency, and that's part of the problem with putting these deals together. They're so complicated and they're pretty small to start with. So that an apartment developer who wants to do 200 units can't really play in the TOD game, except at very, very few stations because he doesn't have the footprint, real estate available, but I can do 50, 60, 70 units on a 20,000 foot footprint. If everybody will work with me to let me do that, and let me develop parking that works both for me and also within the code. So when you can develop 50 or 60 units on half an acre, guess what? You got 100 units to the acre, and that's what density is all about. And if you can do it, we've started, we were the first affordable TOD at Yale Station that we opened in 2011. Fully leased from the get-go, with seniors now riding transit every day coming out of our building. We're going to do the same project at University. But just think of that, if we can do 2 projects in a couple of years, starting with nothing, and other people can do the same, all of a sudden we have 22 projects, and they can't all be the same thing. They should be mixed income. I think that's the next challenge. Parking is a huge part of this. Before I get off, I got to pitch Senate Bill 27, so give me 1 minute on that, and then I'll be quiet for the rest of it. All of us have to get involved at the state legislature and pay attention to what's going on. I'm not talking about the current stuff that's going on, but there are a couple of bills that were mentioned this morning that Mayor Hogan mentioned, but this Senate Bill 27, if we just focus on that, Senate Bill 27 essentially gives RTD or a municipality that RTD would sell its surface parking land to the right to build a structure and charge for parking. What a concept. RTD can't charge for parking. That's the dirty little secret. That's why there aren't any parking garages. So you can't build a parking garage without a revenue source. The revenue source is people paying for parking. So therefore, you have all these large parking lots, in some cases small parking lots, but they're all surface lots with very, very few exceptions. This would allow, and the mayor, this morning, Mayor Hogan used Iowa Station as an example. I'll use it real quickly. There's a 15-acre footprint right next to the light rail station, right at the freeway interchange of Iowa and 225, which was going to be the end of the line station before the Kiewit project came along. Thank goodness for that, Kiewit. But 15 acres of land owned by one land